This is episode 1 of the Relentless Man podcast, Building Blocks of the Relentless Man. Welcome to the Relentless Man podcast. I'm your host, Christian Mojaiso. My goal is to help you become the man you need to become in order to accomplish your goals. To do this, I will have to be very raw and brutally honest with you. If you're easily offended, stop listening. If you're easily triggered, stop listening. If you can't handle explicit language, stop listening. If you are fragile, stop listening. Otherwise, let's dig in. In this podcast episode, we're going to be looking for what are the building blocks, what are the foundations of a relentless man. Before we begin this, I need to answer a question that I think is very important. We need to determine whether this podcast will be of value to you, because I absolutely do not want to waste your time. So, if you're genuinely not ambitious, and yes, it is possible to be genuinely not ambitious. For instance, we have examples of people who, let's say they were in school and the person was a kid and they weren't doing that well, let's say on a math test or something, but they really wanted to get an A, so they'd dream of getting an A and then they'd get an F, and then the teacher would, it kind of hit them really hard, but then they'd dream again of getting an A and they'd get an F still, and this would go on for a while. After a while, they stopped dreaming, they stopped believing that they can actually get an A, and such a person might consider themselves to be not ambitious. This is actually not correct. It's just they've been beaten down so much that they've actually convinced themselves that they have no ambitions. Those ambitions did not disappear. If you're that sort of person who's just been beaten down so much by life to the point where you don't think you're ambitious, you don't have big dreams and goals, well then, if you're that sort of person, this podcast will certainly be of value to you, and it would help you to build yourself up and follow the true ambitions that are in your heart. However, there are people who are genuinely not ambitious. Right? If you're the sort of person who, for example, doesn't want to become better, doesn't want to improve anything, is happy with where they are, just want to chill out, stay at the beach, smell the roses, just enjoy life. You just want to be. No need to become more, no need to expand yourself, etc. So, obviously, there's nothing wrong with being that sort of person, right? Because there's no point being something that you're not. And if this is your true nature, if you're the sort of person who is not ambitious, this is okay. The only thing is that this podcast will certainly be a waste of time for you. Because the person I'm really talking to here is the sort of person that is not satisfied with their current situation. They want to become more intelligent. They want to become stronger. They want to become more adaptable. They want to build things. They want to start a business. They want to transform education. They want to run the government. They want to create a new government system. They want to change how things are, and they want to have massive impact on the world. If you're that sort of person, if you're that sort of ambitious man, then this podcast is certainly for you. So, if you really are an ambitious person, then there is a gap between where you are and where you want to be. If there was no such gap, then you should be able to get out of here and get out of your house and just instantly start doing what it is you want to do. The very fact that you can't do it yet means that you're not yet where you need to be. There are things that need to be transformed. In a sense, you have to become a different kind of person in order to accomplish your goals, whatever they may be. Let's dig in more into this concept of the gap. So, there is a gap. Let's say for instance that you want to be master the Spanish language. Your goal is to master the Spanish language. If we're going to suppose that at the moment you don't know any Spanish, what would it take to move from the state of not knowing the language to mastering the language? Well, there's a couple of things you'd be able to do. Actually, there's 4 things really. You'd have to be able to speak Spanish. You'd have to be able to listen to the Spanish language. You'd have to be able to read in Spanish. Did I leave anything else out? I think there's usually 4 skills. Read, write, speak, listen. Right. Those 4 skills. If you could do those 4 things, then you've mastered the Spanish language. The fact that at the moment you can't speak the Spanish language fluently means that one of these things has not really been mastered. And what I'm saying here is that the only thing stopping you right now from getting out of your house and going out there and making a brilliant speech in Spanish or listening to a technical presentation in the language is these 4 things: reading, writing, speaking, and I keep forgetting what the 4th one was. What do these 4 things have in common? These 4 things are skills. So, the only thing stopping you from being a master of the Spanish language is a bunch of skills. Let's look at this again, but in a different field. Let's look at another example here. Suppose you want to become an exceptional mathematician. What would it take for you to become a master mathematician? And we're supposing at the moment we're going to go really basic. We're going to assume that you don't even know how to add. Let's say you don't know how to add, but you want to become an exceptional mathematician. What would that take? What would it take to fill in this gap between not knowing the subject to mastering the subject? Well, let's look at a couple of things. You'd have to be able to understand complex mathematical theories. You'd have to be able to, and there are many complex mathematical theories, obviously. There's topology, linear algebra, abstract algebra, a lot of advanced, really complex and dense topics. All of those, you'd have to become the sort of person that can understand these theories successfully. The other thing is you have to become the sort of person that can create such theories. And this in itself is not an easy thing to do. The other thing is you'd have to become a problem solver. At its very core, a mathematician is a problem solver. You'd have to be the sort of person that can take a really hard problem, attack it relentlessly, and come up with a solution. And you have to be able to do these problems that no one has ever been able to solve. The other thing that you'd have to be able to do in order to become a master mathematician is that you need to be able to know what kind of problems to work on. That is, you'd have to gauge your own strengths and weaknesses, gauge what you know and what you don't know, and then only pick problems for which your skill set is perfectly matched and ignore problems for which your skill set is not matched. This is actually an art form and is not at all easy to do. So, if you can do these 4 things, if you can understand complex mathematical theories, you can create complex mathematical theories, you can solve really hard mathematical problems, and you know which problems to work on. If you can do these 4 things, there are obviously others, but these are the main 4 things. If you can do these 4 things, we say you've become an exceptional mathematician. So the only thing stopping you from getting out of your house right now and going out there and creating a groundbreaking mathematical theory is that you've not mastered all of this. You've not mastered 1 of them, 2 of them, 3 of them, or just all of them. So, the reason you're not an exceptional mathematician now is really because you haven't mastered a bunch of skills. Because all these 4 things we're talking about are a bunch of skills. So the thing standing in your way basically is skills, and a bunch of them. Just actually 4, not that many. Let's look at a slightly disparate field. Let's say you want to become a chess grandmaster. So a chess grandmaster is the highest position one can ever get to, because I'm short of being a world champion, and a tiny, very tiny fraction of chess players are actually grandmasters. And these people, the stuff they can do with their brain, the amount of mind-boggling calculations they can do, their strategic understanding of the game is really exceptional. In fact, if you're a beginner, they just seem like they came from another planet. So let's say you, at the moment, don't even know the rules of chess, and you want to become a chess grandmaster. What would it take to become a chess grandmaster? Well, you notice that there is this gap between you not knowing anything and becoming a chess grandmaster. And then you ask yourself, well, what are the important things? What do I need to know in order to become this? And when you look carefully, you realize you'd really have to master 4 things. The first thing is you'd have to be a master of the opening. In chess, the opening is where everything begins. That's when they set up the game. So the rooks are placed in order to attack straight lines, usually called files, and attacking ranks. The pawns are placed at the center in order to control the board and to be easily deployable to create maximum damage for the opponent. You have to place your bishops on diagonals, etc. The battle analogy would be just at the beginning of a battle. What happens? The troops are placed, they're transported to strategic locations. The weaponry, we make sure that it works. The bazookas are placed in the correct locations. Everything is put together to ensure that when the battle actually begins, the army could be really effective in crushing the enemy. This is what one would have to do. This is one of the things one would have to do to become a chess grandmaster. They'd have to become a master of the chess opening. What else would they have to do? Well, then you'd have to be a master of the middle game. The middle game is the phase of the game where it's the bloody phase of the game. That's where things get captured and a lot of complex, mind-boggling calculations happen. A lot of maneuvering happens as well. You'd have to be a master of this phase of the game too. Then you'd have to master the end game. Well, the end game is the phase of the game where many of the pieces have been captured, right? The knights are gone, maybe the queen is gone, you just have a few pawns and maybe a rook. The power is minimal. If you don't play chess, then the analogy could be in battle, for instance. People have gone to battle, they've been fighting, and they're near the end. How do they know they're near the end? Is because both sides, both armies that are fighting have run out of resources. Most of the soldiers have been killed. A lot of really strategic people are no longer there. The generals are wounded, perhaps really tired, and struggling to think here. And at this point, the final strategies and maneuvers are being done in order for one side to clinch the military victory. We have that exact same thing in chess as well, and that's what the end game is. And you'd have to be a master of that. And if you can master the opening, master the middle game, master the end game, the other thing you'd have to be able to do is you'd have to be able to understand your own strengths and weaknesses and understand the strengths and weaknesses of your opponent. That way you could steer the game. You play on the board and you make sure you set up a position that capitalizes on your strengths and minimizes your weaknesses, while at the same time capitalizing on your opponent's weaknesses and not really like avoiding their strengths as much as possible. This is also an art form. If you can do these four things, master the opening, master the middle game, master the end game, understand yourself and your enemy. If you can do these four things, then we say that if you can master these things, then you're really, as far as playing strength is concerned, you're a grandmaster. So the only thing stopping you right now from going to a tournament and crushing other grandmasters is the fact that you have not mastered these four skills. Yes, they are skills. So the only thing stopping you is a bunch of skills. So I hope you're noticing a pattern here. Whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, there is a gap between where you are and where you need to be. And that gap is filled up with usually not that many things, a few things, really important things that you need to do in order to get to where you need to go. But all of these things are skills. So one of the building blocks of a relentless man is skills, a skill set. One skill, two skills, a bunch of skills, but this is really the core. Now, having listened to this, actually, maybe I should dig a little, because this doesn't just apply to just achieving a goal, say. It also applies to differences between people. What's the difference between you, say, and Albert Einstein, the physicist? Well, obviously, he might be a different race than you, he might be older, etc. But let's talk about his physics skill. Why is it that perhaps you can't create theories that are as groundbreaking as his? Well, the reason you can't do that is because he mastered a bunch of skills that you hadn't mastered. He understood aspects of differential geometry, for instance. This is a branch of mathematics. He understood how theories are built up, how to build a theory based on just a few founding principles. And very likely, that's a skill set. It's not easy to grasp. And it's possible that at the moment you haven't mastered that skill set yet. He understood a lot of complex mathematics. He knew when to follow his intuition. He knew how to work in pictures. All these are skills that Albert Einstein had, and likely you might not have these skills. And this is really what is stopping you. The lack of mastery of these skills is what is stopping you from creating theories at the caliber of this guy. What's the difference between you and someone like Elon Musk? The difference is Elon Musk has a bunch of skills that you do not. He understands engineering. You might not be a master of engineering like he is. He understands people. And it's possible that you don't understand people to his level. He knows how to bring out the best in people. These are all skills. He very likely understands how money works. He knows how to innovate and come up with new ideas. These things might seem so complex, but they're just a bunch of skills. It is possible for you to rise to a level of someone as extraordinary as this one. And what is it going to take? Mastery of a bunch of skills. So in terms of building blocks of a relentless man, skills are at the very core. Now you might be thinking, wow, so skills must be the most fundamental thing that I need in order to become a relentless man and accomplish my goals. Well, this is actually not correct. There is something even more fundamental than skills. What is that? Well, that's mindset. Every action you take, every movement, every decision, every behavior is a consequence of the way you think. Your mindset, or how you view the world, your theory of the world determines every action you take. And mindset is more fundamental than skill because, think about it, what ultimately decides whether you're going to take up a skill, whether you're going to attack the skill, how long you're going to stick to it before you give up. If at all you'll show up and actually start learning the skills you need to learn in order to become the person you need to become. What determines that? It's your mindset and your thought process. Now, this issue of mindset is actually very close to my heart. The reason it's so close is because I struggled with it very much as a kid. I remember back when I was in high school, I was maybe at the time 13, 14 years old. I took an IQ test. And on this IQ test, I scored 90. Now, if you know anything about IQ tests, then you know that an IQ of 100 says you have average intelligence. Most people, when given the IQ test, are going to score 100. Some people are going to score above, around 120, 130. And we call these people gifted. You score something like 150, 160, or Einstein level, and they call you a genius or super genius, depending on how you want to do it. And obviously, if you score below 100, say 90, anything below, like if you go 50, 60, then they call you an imbecile. I mean, they used to call you that until obviously society became more politically correct, but that's really what it means. You're at the very bottom of intelligence scale. When I received the news, when I took this IQ test and scored 90, I don't remember, it was 90 something, this was devastating news for me. Why was it? Part of it was saying that I was dumber than most people. But why was that so painful to me? It's because I had been used to thinking of my skills as fixed. I'd always thought of myself as intelligence as something that you either have or you do not. If you are lucky, if you're born intelligent, then lucky you. You can become a physicist. You can become a mathematician. You could change the economy. You could become the president. But if you're unlucky to be born stupid with a low IQ, then you're screwed. There is no hope for you. Basically, you might as well just settle in at your position in life, sweeping toilets, flipping burgers, etc. Now, you can imagine how someone with a mindset like mine would take something as scoring an IQ of 90. I felt completely stupid, completely worthless. I was crushed. I tried to shrug it off and not take it too seriously and just continue with my life. But to be honest, this particular diagnosis of my intelligence always nagged me and always came back to eat at me later on. And this went on for a while. Every time I'd take on an activity, I'd try to learn some mathematics, I try to do something complicated, or dream about being a great scientist, every time I try to do this, there'd be this thing eating at me. Maybe it would tell me, look, this is not for you. The people who become great scientists are people who are smart. You're not smart, you're stupid. That's what the IQ test says you are. You're stupid. And no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you focus and practice, there is just a limit, and you don't belong in these high echelons of intellectual achievement. This would eat at me. And it ate at me for a long time until I discovered Malcolm Gladwell's text. Malcolm Gladwell, he's a writer, and he wrote, every book actually is written is a bestseller. I encourage checking them out. He came out with this book, and the book was called Outliers. It was the study of really extraordinary people. And in there, he talked about something called the 10,000 hour rule. The idea was, whatever the domain is, if it's baseball, or it's chess, or it's computer programming, if you get an individual of average, even below average intelligence, and you got them to practice in a way called deliberate practice. Deliberate practice just means practice is very intentional. You focus on your weaknesses. You can measure your progress. If one applies deliberate practice over a period of 10 years, working 3 hours every day, or the equivalent of 10,000 hours, then they could become world-class at the skill that they're trying to tackle. That was the idea. I found this idea very inspiring because ultimately the consequence of it was intelligence is not a fixed quantity. You can increase your intelligence through practice. If you practice really hard, you could become, that's what he was telling me. He was telling me if I practice really hard, I could become extraordinary, and all these dreams I have in my brain can actually be realized. Obviously, the theory is more nuanced and it's not as simplistic as it is, but at the time, that's the message I got from the book. And it did lift me up. It made me genuinely believe I could accomplish the big dreams I had and the goals I had, and that my intelligence can actually be enhanced and I could become smarter. I don't have to be stuck as the guy with the 90-something IQ. But it takes time usually for important lessons to seep in. And now I found myself in college as a freshman year, and I had to learn these lessons again because my goal at the time was to become very good at mathematics, and I'd go into these classes and the professor would... One thing that was really important was in these classes that teach really complex mathematical ideas. And in order to achieve my goal, I had to become very good at understanding these complex ideas. And usually we'd go to lecture and we'd meet the professor, and the professor would be teaching. And then the idea was, if I have a problem or I don't understand something, the thing that would have moved me forward towards my goals would have been to raise my hand and ask whenever I'm confused. When the professor asks students to make a guess about something they're not sure, I should have raised my hand and guessed. Now, here's where my mindset really messed with me. Did I ask questions? Of course, initially, because I was a naive freshman. But then there were a couple of scenarios that would play out. In one scenario, I'd go to class, and this was in one of my linear algebra classes. I had this professor, a woman, really nice lady, by the way. And she'd ask us questions in class. And for a while there, she kept asking questions that I knew, so I was on a roll. I'd raise my hand and answer them. And then she'd get super excited. Oh, wow, that's amazing. So in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, this professor thinks I'm smart. And the students think I'm smart. And I should ask a bunch of more questions and answer them. So now I'm thinking I'm really smart. I've now created the reputation of being this intelligent, smart guy. The sort of guy that answers every question correctly. Do you think this motivated me to keep asking questions? Absolutely not. I was now extremely frightened and threatened when I went to class. I didn't want to raise my hand and answer questions or try or ask questions, because what if I answer the question incorrectly? What if I ask a dumb question? What's going to happen to my reputation? If I do that, I thought to myself, well, suddenly everybody in class is going to realize that although I was trying to pretend for a while, my true essence is stupidity, and everyone will be able to see my stupidity. This frightened me so much. At the time, obviously, I didn't realize. In retrospect, I see why. This frightened me so much that I did not raise my hand to ask questions or to make guesses unless I was absolutely sure. So what was the impact of this? I would reinforce what I know by answering questions and I'd appear smart. Then the things I didn't know where the actual growth happens, I wouldn't focus on those. And so my mastery of the subject would go down. I didn't learn it as well as I could have. So my mindset here, my belief that my intelligence was something I couldn't change, was actually holding me back in a significant way and sabotaging every attempt I was making to master the skills I needed to master in order to achieve my goal, becoming a mathematician. Other scenarios in the classroom, because this is really my arena, would show up. In some other classrooms, I'd be sitting there, and then I'd ask a question, and I'd ask the question to the professor. Then the professor would give me a look, and suggesting that what I'd asked was just trivial. In mathematics, when they say a question is trivial, it's a sort of thing the professor expects you to know, and they're surprised how you don't know it. How could you be asking such a stupid questions? Here is where I'd ask questions, and I'd ask these trivial questions. Then the professor would give me this look, and I'd think to myself, damn it, I asked a stupid question. Now everybody in the class, my status in the class has now been confirmed that I'm stupid. Everybody's wondering, how the heck don't I know this? Now you think, now that I'd established myself as this foolish, stupid person, that would free me up to keep asking questions because my reputation is already known. I have nothing to lose. Well, absolutely not. Although I was stupid, there were levels of stupid below me. I didn't want people to think I was stupider than I actually am. So what did I do? I didn't ask questions. Once again, sabotaging myself and stopping myself from doing what I needed to do in order to accomplish my goals. Then a spiral would continue. Now I'd be depressed. Then I'd stay in my room and don't want to go to class. The reason I didn't want to go to class was I thought the professor and the students knew how stupid I was. And if I went to class, then I had to face the look in their eye of just how stupid I was. How did I avoid this? By staying in my room and not going to class at all. In other scenarios, I'd rush out of my room, go pick up food in the dining hall, then run quickly before I could talk to anybody back to my room. I thought, why did I do this? I thought that even people who weren't in the class, even professors that hadn't taught me, I thought that they could see through me and see my mediocrity and my stupidity and my low intelligence and see what a dumbass I was. As a result, I'd get my food and run away so they wouldn't see me, which would now make me antisocial, which would make it impossible for me to socialize, impossible for me to develop and connect with the community, which made my math work hard. It was just a downward spiral after there. All of this emanated from the simple fact that I believed that my intelligence was fixed, and I'd had this measurement of my intelligence as being low. And this was sabotaging my career. This is just one example, obviously, of how mindset or poor mindset can sabotage your goals. And it helps to reinforce the idea that although in this gap between who you are and who you need to become in order to accomplish your goals, although that is filled with a bunch of skills, and skills is a fundamental building block, there's something even more fundamental, and that thing is your mindset. Without a good mindset, nothing moves. And by the way, everybody has a mindset. The only question is whether it's consciously constructed or if you're moving on autopilot. What are the examples of mindsets out there? For instance, there's a mindset like, I never give up. This particular idea or belief system is really important because in any task you try to undertake, at some point things get hard, at some point they get challenging, and usually this is where people give up. The people who make things happen are people who push through such hard times, who stick to the skill until they master it. But in order to do that, they need this belief system of, I never give up, for instance. Now, if it's possible that you have this mindset and you don't know about it, it was just instilled in you as a kid and you never gave up, but you never took part in consciously constructing it. In this particular instance, whether you know about this mindset or not, it's still helping you to stick with the project and get it done. However, if you're moving on autopilot, and let's say you don't have that mindset, your mindset is something completely different. You did not sit down and think, but really your mindset is, when things get hard, I give up. You didn't construct it, you didn't create a strategy, you didn't carefully craft it, but based on your history and your environment and all the things that you've had up till this point, effectively your mindset is, when things get hard, I don't do hard things. I abandon them and I do something else. You have the mindset of a dabbler. Now suppose you have this mindset, but you don't know about it. Then when you start a project, when you try to master skills, you've already sabotaged yourself at the beginning. You just find yourself abandoning things and going to something else. And this is a result of a mindset that you did not carefully construct. In this sense, would say your mindset is on autopilot, not consciously crafted. Now, if you're lucky and you have the right mindset and don't know about it, that will serve you for a while. It probably already is. But I'd still advocate actually thinking about your own mindset and crafting the correct one, because everybody can improve. Anybody can grow and improve their mindset. So in summary, there is a gap between who you are and who you want to become. This gap is filled up with something, and that's skills. The only thing stopping you from living the life you want to live is a bunch of skills. So skills are a fundamental building block of being a relentless man. The other fundamental is mindset, and mindset is even more fundamental than skills, because without it, you're not going to master anything or you're going to sabotage yourself. The relentless man realizes that there is a gap between who he is and who he needs to become, and that this gap is filled with a bunch of skills. The mediocre man, on the other hand, does not know where he is. He exaggerates. He claims to know things he doesn't know. Or the things that he does know, he convinces himself that he has not mastered them. He never thought of a gap between where he is and where he needs to be. He has no goals and has not defined them clearly. The relentless man realizes that if he masters a few skills, he can become the man he needs to become in order to accomplish his goals. The mediocre man never took time to analyze this gap and figure out what he needs to learn, what he needs to master in order to become the person he needs to become. What does he do? He spends his time complaining. He spends his time whining. He blames the government. He blames the economy. He blames the education system. He blames his parents for never having brought him up right. He blames everything but himself for his life, because he views his current situation as something that is permanent. There is nothing he can do to move from where he is to where he wants to be. And with that point of view, all he could do is complain and cry. So he spends his evenings with his head pressed on his mother's thighs, crying like a bitch. The relentless man realizes that mindset is of fundamental importance. As a result, he spends his time researching what the correct mindset is to have, and he crafts a mindset that will enable him to accomplish what he's set out to accomplish. The mediocre man never heard of mindset, does not know that it can be crafted, and therefore spends no time crafting the correct mindset. He instead operates on autopilot. He relies on his mother, his father, his sister, his brother, the government, the economy, a bunch of journalists. He relies on these external people and bodies to tell him, to give him a mindset. Is it any wonder that then his life is one disaster after another? Thank you very much for listening to this podcast. If you like what you're listening to, or you found this podcast to be of value, please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes. If you know somebody who might find this podcast very interesting or valuable to them, please tell them about it. My goal is always to serve you. In particular, every episode is centered around a question that is facing a community member. So think about a problem that is at your core, a problem that is really important. It's really important that you have solved. To do this better, engage in a thought experiment if you like. Suppose there's this guy who comes up to you. He's a malicious sadist. And this guy, it's a done deal. He's gonna take away your balls. He's gonna chop off your balls. He's gonna do that. But he's giving you an option to solve one problem in your life in exchange for taking away your balls. What problem would you have him solve? What problem is worth losing your balls for? Think about this, engage in the thought experiment, and then message me your ball problem. If you hate this podcast or hate parts of it, I especially want to hear from you as well. Please message me. My Facebook name is Christian Mojaiso. My email address is mojaiso@gmail.com. Thank you very much once again for listening to this episode and hope to see you on the next one. Bye.